Welcome to the Dr. PhilGood, our weekly broadcast on trauma recovery, cellular health, and real life healing from the inside out.
This series is proudly sponsored by the Patrick Risha CTE Awareness Foundation, whose mission is to prevent CTE through education and early intervention.
A mission that's critical for families like ours navigating brain injury, behavioral changes, and long-term caregiving.
You can visit them at stopcte.org.
So, our title today is When Trauma Isn't Just in Your Head. And beginning and end are hard. Would you agree with me, David?
Absolutely.
This is the beginning, our very, very first podcast here at Dr. PhilGood.
Back home.
Back home. And today we are gonna anchor this show.
When you say anchor the show, could you explain yourself to me, please?
Well, we're gonna explain for our listeners why we are here or what we are doing and who we are for and who we are not for.
Well, ain't that special?
I'm gonna start it to make it easy, okay?
Oh, please do. Every time
So,
you do start something, it makes it
I'm a
easier.
trauma survivor. I'm a trauma-aware holistic wellness coach. And I've been practicing as such for over 8 years now. And this work has been transforming, not just as a coach, but as your wife, David.
I told you I was going to get you a PhD in CTE.
Well, in the past 5 years, I've been focusing on microbiology and more precisely, really cellular wellness and how that relates to trauma. But through our personal experiences and the research that we've done, I came to understand that there is really no difference between trauma survivors when it comes to physiology. And what I mean by that is that there are definite biological imprints that exist in our bodies due to the trauma that we experienced.
Yes.
And so, just to give you guys an example, I use this today throughout a conversation with a holistic wellness practitioner. When I was 19, I experienced a sexual assault that I survived. And for many years, I didn't even realize that I was a trauma survivor because the person who committed it was somebody who I knew intimately. And it changed the experience to the point where I really didn't know that I was a trauma survivor. But one thing that happened when I was 19 years old and probably for about 12, 15 years after that, was that when people asked me how old I was, I literally couldn't tell them without doing the math. Going like, okay, so right now it's 2025. I was born, such and such year. I must be this many years old. And people always made a joke about it.
Yeah, you didn't need to.
And they were like, what, you don't know how old you are? Or did you really have to calculate that? And I really did have to calculate it.
The stress of finding that out sorry, excuse me, my headphones went nuts. The stress when someone asks you that is overwhelming, isn't it? Like when you get a question like that and you know that you should know it.
Yeah, I thought I just had a quirky personality. I didn't really think much about it back then. I didn't really understand this until I met you. And finally, I started to develop a deeper relationship with somebody who's been through a lot more trauma than myself, and somebody who was intelligent and capable of expressing their own experiences and their own struggles. And that was around the time when I realized that it's not a coincidence that I started to have trouble with sensing time in my own body after that traumatic experience.
Trauma does a number on you.
Yeah.
It does a number on you.
So, but what I found as a wellness coach in my practice is that a lot of wellness coaches and psychologists and probably even psychiatrists. I don't know. I never really dealt with the psychiatrist, so to speak. But a lot of the professionals who are out there to help trauma survivors are prone to approach this work from only one angle. So, like, I meet a lot of trauma informed wellness coaches
Mm-hmm.
recently, and they either are spiritual or they think it's a mindset or they think it's purely biologic and
Biological.
biological. Sorry, I
Yes,
knew
no
it
worries.
wasn't right. Biological, and it's neither one of those. It's really the transformation that happened in my life has happened because I worked on it mentally, I worked on it spiritually, and I worked on it biologically.
Yep. So your understanding of biology helped, and the scientific part of you helped, and then having a spiritual side helped. And it's a matter of like we're all made of body, soul, and spirit. So I believe that's the reasoning to overcome trauma and to heal from it. That it takes all three to be in unity and work together to get complete healing. That's why we're trying to become whole.
Yeah, and a big part of the story is connecting with others through trauma, not to hide it or not to live from shame about it, but
Right.
connecting with others and making those changes in our lives that helps us to reach the next step so that we can actually guide those who were who came into our lives with similar experiences.
And boy, do they come in with
Yeah,
similar
but
experiences.
let's talk about your experience because that's I actually shared your story with this lady today. I love to share your story, but I don't want to do your part here.
Well, I like it when someone else shares my story if they know it correctly. The one thing most people don't know about me is that I didn't start sharing the trauma and head trauma and physical trauma. I didn't start talking about this publicly until after I was about 40 years old. I was writing about it when remember when MySpace came out? Were you
Oh
like
yeah,
4 years old?
no, I wasn't 4 years.
Well, it was 2006 or 2007, and I had a blog, and up until then, I kept it all in journals, and I wrote it into songs, and it was cryptic, and no one understood what I was talking about. It's going to be really interesting to release that stuff later on now because I listen to it and it's just man, wow! I was really writing about what we're dealing with right now. Back then, I didn't really know. I thought maybe I was a little crazy. I knew I was writing about stuff, but I thought I was imagining a lot of my issues. I thought it was an imagination, and I was just as a gift writing music into it, and I wrote, found it all. I always found myself in the scriptures, and I think anybody can do that if they read the Bible. But then around 40 years old, um, I began losing myself more and more. And when I mean losing myself, if anyone has suffered trauma of any kind, there's a part of you that's missing that you wish you could get back. You're like, man, before this happened, or I was different. I'm missing something about myself. If you've had head traumas, especially, you do come out of those things missing parts of yourself.
But you had more than just head trauma, so let me
Mm-hmm.
actually go back to your trauma. It's this is a very important story for
Go ahead.
many to hear. So you're the survival of how many suicide attempts?
I can't count
Right.
them.
Well, we don't know, but let us tell about what happened when you were 15, what happened when you were 17, what happened when you
At
were
15, I was jumped by three drunk cowboys, and they were all over 30 years old. And I was out west where cowboys are cowboys. And they jumped me and pulled a knife on me. And I was like, and I just moved to the west. So my only salvation was my smart mouth. And I said, really? You guys are cowboys, probably twice my age, 3 of you, and a knife? And then I don't remember anything after that until a cop comes up and asks me, what my name was, what year it was. And he realized I had a concussion, and then they took me to the hospital.
And do you personally believe that was related to the amnesia that you experienced, or no?
No, when I got knocked out. That I hadn't had amnesia at this point. I was 15. I got amnesia at 17. So,
well, what happened in those 2 years?
I had a lot of head traumas after that. The first concussion that I was recorded to have was that one at 15, and then after that concussion, PTSD followed with that because of the knife being pulled on me, being knocked out. And I reacted in violence. And so when we took those people to court, I was underage, so my mom was suing them, making a big deal out of it. I wish she wouldn't have. And I was trying to go to school for the first time at a public school, and I beat them up pretty good, really. They beat me up in these rocks, and I busted the back of their truck out.
Oh, you didn't play contact sports?
Not before that,
yeah,
no.
I gotcha.
After this happened, yes, I wanted to play football, and I wanted to wrestle, and I wanted to fight, and I would headbutt you before punching you. I didn't really have a mean punch, I was a little smart aleck preacher's kid. Never used my fist for nothing but writing, Yeah, a little nerd. And but one of my best friends was a psycho. He was really well known for beating the snot out of just about anybody. And him and I ended up being best friends. And he was a star football player, state champion wrestler, and so he egged me on to fight a lot. I enjoyed fighting. Smart elf until somebody hit me, and that was all. I didn't really know how to fight, but if you knocked me out,
let me ask you a question. This is it's something that I always try to understand when it comes to men and fighting. Is that like a game, or is that like a pleasure, or what's
after what happened with
or
me?
Is it because you're angry, or what is going on?
There was a testosterone rush of.
Which is what you feel what after a good fight?
Like just alive, just, and it was just I felt good after a good fight, and a lot of times I would feel this. I would feel this internal loss of something and have this anger of rage about something I wouldn't even know what it is.
That's before or
after this first concussion.
Oh.
So for that
from
15 to 17.
Anger.
Yeah, that's just loaded with rage.
Yeah, a lot of people can.
And I would punch a wall. I'd punch a brick wall just to hurt my hand. I knew it was going to hurt, but I'd do it so that I would hurt.
Yeah.
And then getting in fights with people that were way bigger than me. I knew I was going to get my head pounded in, but it was just a rush of adrenaline that would kick in, and I would always, they might beat me up, but they never won, because if you know what I mean.
So I know you had the head-on collision in 2008, which almost took your life, and then you also had other accidents in between. But what happened? This is something.
Well, at 17 happened.
No.
Serious.
When you were 40, what happened when you were 40 that made you change and started to talk about the trauma?
Well, somebody brought to my attention that I had already been diagnosed bipolar. After my car accident in 2008, I lost another big piece of who I was, and a big piece of my memory.
Yeah, like a few months or something like that.
Yeah. And then I lost a big, huge part of who I was. Like my personality was gone, my confidence, the person who I was, the knowledge of everything I had been through was gone. And I didn't, like, I always had, like, let's see, like, I kind of had embraced my psycho, you know, enjoyed being a little wild. After I come out of that car accident, I didn't want to be out of control. And I was doing things that I didn't want to do, and I was blacking out way more than I had before. So I locked down and isolated in an apartment for about 4.5 years after that car accident. Didn't date anybody, didn't do, all I did was see my kids on special occasions, on holidays and stuff. And then I stayed to myself that time. But then the information about head injuries came about, and I had met someone that believed that she was bipolar, and I was already disabled from the car accident and given a crazy check from the state that, you know, titled me as bipolar. So when I met this person and she had said, I think I'm bipolar, we were different. We were different than each other. And she began noticing things differently. And after hearing my story, she started believing that, you know, it sounds to me like you got head trauma, and the CTE was just beginning to, you know, become known.
I got a question, sorry, but
Yeah, go ahead.
are you sure this is recording? Because it's not showing the time here. Here, I know it's recording. I know the camera is
See
recording.
the time right there?
Yeah, that's the actual
Yeah.
time.
It doesn't record on here. It records up there.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so that means that we're hitting for almost 20 minutes, so we gotta move on. So what's the idea when, you know, people, I don't know if you experience that, but you know, like when you're under pressure by your environment because you have these symptoms of trauma that people don't understand, and they label it this and that, and
That's when I first started talking. It was when I got diagnosed bipolar disorder. I know the stigma behind having a mental illness and how much of a burden that is for people to carry. And I didn't seem to mind it. And I said, for one, I'm not going to allow it to make me into something that I'm not. And I'm going to educate folks. So what I first started doing was just talking about bipolar disorder on social media and discussing, you know, the things that I went through. I exposed myself. I was very open and shared the ups and downs that I went through. I've always been a pretty open
so you were
guy.
talking about it like that mentally.
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Is
dealing with
so let's uncode or decode. I'm sorry. Let's decode or decipher a little bit for people what that looks like at the level of biology and because the mindset is we talked about it a little bit. You have these, you know, yeah, you have different things in your personality. You have anger. You have like different emotions to deal with, and it makes it difficult to communicate with people or being understood, and makes you feel like you never really belong anywhere and all that kind of stuff. But like one of the things that people teach or say is like, you know, you have to try harder. And so when we talk
I've heard
about
that a million times.
yeah, and so when we talk about a dysregulated nervous system, I don't want to use technical terms, but if you guys don't know what that means, I really suggest for you to look into what regulating the nervous system means. We're going to talk about it in this show. But if you deal from a dysregulated nervous system, there is no way that trying harder is going to do anything else but make things worse.
Right.
And then
It's a frustrating
and then
place
if
for
you're
person
in
to
a
be.
spiritual community, you have a chance that people are going to tell you that you need to pray harder or meditate more or do this or that, or you know, like and
There's
you
just something wrong if you can't control your anger. There's just
and then
you
the
don't
and then
pray
the other
enough.
thing
you need
that
more of the Holy
you know,
Ghost.
people say this is kind of funny too, it cracks me up now, not so much
Go
like
to therapy.
20 years ago I might have believed it, but use positive affirmations, but positive affirmations don't do nothing for you if you actually don't believe in the affirmations that you're saying.
Right.
Because your body does not react to anything that you don't believe. So repeating the same statement that your body is not in alignment with is not going to do anything else but create more dysregulation, like more disharmony, if you will.
What?
You constantly worry about his safety. Then why aren't you worried about this? Protect his brain. Prevent CTE. Learn more at stopcte.org.
One of the really most difficult things for me after the car accident, then being diagnosed bipolar, and accepting that was that I wasn't myself. I was on psychiatric medicine that just drilled me with it over and over. This one wouldn't work. They'd put this one. Just kept filling me with psychiatric meds. And I lost myself completely in there. And I knew I was, I had feeling of missing a part of who I was anyway. But I had to accept what my life was at this point. So I accepted, there's some peace in acceptance. And so I accepted it, but it was a part of me that was just, I didn't feel authentic. I didn't feel like myself to accept it. I didn't really feel like I was bipolar. I thought, I'm just accepting it. This is something different than what that label is. And
well, you can't even really say that you're not different when your body is flooded with inflammation, your nervous system wiring is completely out of whack, your hormones are completely out of whack, which cause you being violent or being moody or being depressed or being anxious.
I was going through it. It looked like multiple personality is what it looked like, because I would go for weeks at a time as a certain character with a certain mood, and my voice changed. The way I wrote, I look at my journals and stuff, and my whole writing changed. I'd be writing this one way for 2 or 3 weeks, and the dates would change, and then all of a sudden you'd see me writing in a different tone, and I talked different. And then when I started recording audio, my vocals were different, how I talked.
Because all of these things that I mentioned, from hormones to nervous system and how much sleep you get and how much inflammation is in your body, all of those things are going to influence your personality, your actions, your thoughts, your emotions, everything.
Well, I'm glad I recorded it all, because it's interesting now that we're going to be able to release it in this movie that on a, what do you call it, a timeline that can go by in an hour if it's edited properly.
Right.
It took me 30 years to do it, but we can watch it in an hour, and then you're able to see the truth in it.
So to this conversation, it's an important pillar, if you will, is that the main difference between you and me in how we handled our trauma
Is that I've never stabbed a loved one?
was that well, I don't know. I don't really know if we have evidence of that.
I haven't stabbed anyone.
but is that I found different interventions, if you will, to regulate my nervous system, and you didn't.
Yep.
So that's I didn't. I was always and I shouldn't say I always was, but let me put it this way: I was very much like a holistic wellness-minded person, pretty young or very early, I should say. So I wasn't a big fan of medications, and even drugs. The drugs that I took, they were more like the stimulant category and not the let's calm my nervous system type. I could never really find anything in those drugs for myself. So what I've done was I started to do exercise synchronized with breath such as yoga, or I did yoga nidra, which for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's kind of like a very deep meditative state that you can achieve on demand. And so my life started to circle around those practices, and my life become those practices, and then the nutrition that helped me to deal with the hormones and improve my digestion, which then of course improves brain function. And so depression was kind of like absent in my life until my divorce happened, because that kicked in and it even took me as far that I got back on smoking and all that kind of thing. So it's very important, because what people don't necessarily understand, and we're going to talk about this on our show, is that the mindset and the spiritual work they just don't matter until you regulate your nervous system. They're not going to stick. So your nervous system is going to dictate no matter what. It's going to dictate your hormonal wellness or its lack. It's going to dictate how much you sleep. It's going to dictate what kind of thoughts you're circling in your head. A lot of those things they're really not random. And so let's, even emotions, when we talk about emotions, yes, hormones play a huge role, but what kind of thoughts we have a huge effect on what kind of emotions we feed internally. So it's not, faith by itself is not going to solve this issue. And the purely spiritual approach is not the best way. And it's not just, I'm not saying this that it's not possible. It works for some people. The same way how, the nutrition worked for me back then. But it's that these are complex issues, and they happen in different layers. So in my personal experience, the best way to approach trauma is from every single layer.
I agree. It's hitting it from every angle.
And there is no shame in the struggle. That's the other thing, is that's the first thing that needs to be removed. That, there is no shame in it that I was wacky and I, stabbed that dude who was, by the way, part of the harm that was caused.
Right.
like
go for it. We're not trying to tell you to stab your loved ones.
I'm not saying that I'm proud of it either. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying that don't worry about the labels that are stacked on the issues.
Here's a little practice that I've done for a long time now, since 2019. Is I woke up and I forgave myself every day. I did so many things that I wish I wouldn't have done.
Me too.
I hurt so many people that I wish I wouldn't have hurt. It crushes me still today when I think about it, and so I try not to think about it. But I had to forgive myself. And you really can't forgive other folks until you do learn to forgive yourself.
Correct.
And so that's just
and you can heal until you learn to forgive others and yourself. That's definitely a very important part of the equation.
Yeah, I mean, that's not, when I say forgiving myself, that's not justifying or excusing myself. It's, you literally have to love yourself, and you can't love yourself when you're bound by, look at this I've done, look at this I've done. So you got to forgive yourself, and then the spiritual side, finding your faith and hope in something greater than yourself, and then sharing love and forgiveness with other people.
Well, you see, without forgiveness, you're never going to have peace.
Right.
And without peace, your nervous system is never going to heal.
Yep.
And without your nervous system healing, you're not going to find the same kind of balance that I found in my life or you found in your life.
Well, our people that will be, attached to this show a bit are going to be people that have screwed up quite a bit or been screwed up quite a bit.
Yeah.
That
It goes
want to heal. You want to heal.
back and forth.
It takes a long time to get. I was 40 years old. That's an old man. But the trauma I suffered makes me not even realize how old I am. I'm 51 years old now. Time's just going by like it's nothing. I feel 15 years old. But every time that I've dealt with something from my past properly, and ever since from 7 years ago when Fru and I first met, she taught me things that I didn't know. I taught her things that she didn't know. And in the meantime, we loved each other. And we learned to live with each other's trauma and help each other. I wanted her to heal from the things that she's gone through. She wanted me to heal from the things I've gone through. And then together, we began helping other folks that needed to be healed. And that very first journey we took to Texas to help those poor old folks that got displaced during the tornado, that was so uplifting to me. I felt so good after that that's all I wanted to do was.
So this show is for people who want to help not only themselves but others, people who want to take a part in rescuing themselves. That includes some, trauma survivors and caregivers, TBI
single
families,
moms.
or CT is something that we're also going to talk about as
single parents,
as we like to raise awareness around chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Domestic
but also
violence
burned out
survivors.
professionals who just deal with a lot of stress, and they may not realize that they're trauma survivors, but as they're gonna listen to our conversations with doctors and holistic wellness providers and potentially other trauma survivors, they're gonna recognize themselves in a lot of those stories. And I'm going to say that, people who dealt with addictions in their lives, it doesn't have to be like a substance abuse kind of addiction, but like a food addiction, like somebody who can't put their phones down because they have to check it 152 times.
Addicted to the wrong kind of people.
Yeah, that
man,
too. And
that's a bad one.
Okay, so this show is not for those people who are looking for quick fixes, definitely. And it's also not the toxic positivity crowd. And I know David wants me to define that so bad. But, there is a large segment of our population who are trauma survivors and they refuse to talk about it. And they have this, they pretend this positivity where they're just absolutely avoiding the subject.
Get over it. Just quit it. Forget about it.
Just avoiding the subject. They act like everything is all right.
Let it go.
And in reality, they're probably the most negative people you ever conquered. I mean, came across.
Explosive.
And explosive
and
too.
Very self-sabotaging.
And they seem like unreasonable with their explosiveness too, because their explosiveness is usually related to the trauma that they experience that they don't talk about. So that's the interesting thing about them. So it's not for those people, that's for sure. But you should expect to hear us to share lots of stories, very like raw stories. Like, for example, in the next episode, we're gonna talk about David, I believe, a little in a little more depth, because I didn't let him to tell his story.
You better bring
very
your
much
cotton
right now.
swabs. Your ears are liable to bleed.
But also your tissue paper, because he can cry sometimes.
Yeah.
And so you can expect a lot of explanations about what's going on in your body and why you are prone to exhibit certain behaviors. And then also the tools that lower risk and increase capacity on your journey. because this is a journey, you guys. Healing is not a linear thing. It's something that is very, very much not exponential. It goes up and down, back and forth, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, and so on. So if you want to heal, that's the first thing that you have to get used to, that it's going to take some time and it's going to take some setbacks, and you have to be okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
So in the next 5 segments, next 4 segments, I'm going to say it this way because I really don't know if that David's episode is going to be the next one or not, but I guess at this point we might as well just turn it into David's episode, episode 2. Who is David Carson? But we're going to have educational deep dives in the next 4 episodes where we're going to talk about hormones and the nervous system and brain health. And then we're going to have an expert interview with Dr. DeMaio, which is really, really good. We already recorded that and it's excellent. And then we're going to have a section where we're going to talk about the questions that we've been getting so far. But I'm also going to say right here that as you're listening this show, you should visit us on Facebook. We have a group called Wellness Tuners, and then we also have
Production company.
Yes, Davi Fru Production. And if you guys can't find these, this may change by the time, if you're listening this show in 2032, we may not have these things.
Let's say in 2019, Davi Fru was in tuning off the
right,
cuff,
and today is the 13th of February 2026. So keep that in mind. And
Davi Fru Productions.
And we want you guys to reach out to us. So that's very, very important for us to hear your feedback, to hear your questions, so that we can build these shows around specific questions, because we've been doing this for a long time. So a lot of the topics for us don't surface naturally. We kind of put them in the...
And let's let the listeners know. You okay? We're creating a movie that's been filmed digitally since 2006. Has been documented since 1998. So it's a long-term collection of documentation that's turning into an incredible movie called The Man Who Couldn't Kill Himself. We have a festival that we're putting together that will be a rock and roll festival to bring in people from the university. We're starting in Ole Miss, and that will be bringing in a lot of music fans that we can educate. It's going to be free to the veterans, because veterans are dealing with a lot of mental health issues due to head traumas. And so we're going to educate the masses on what concussions look like, symptoms look like, and what CTE is. And bringing in this holistic approach to healing. And so there's many things that Fru and I are doing through Davi Fru Productions that just Dr. PhilGood Show is one of them. So when you come follow us and listen to the show, there's much to do and much to be entertained by the way.
So we are here to give language, biology, and hope to what you're already living.
You constantly worry about their safety. Then, why aren't you worried about this? We've known the big hits are bad. Now we're learning all those little hits can be worse. Choose Brain Safe Sports. Learn more at stopcte.org.